there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. In today's episode, we are going to talk about Orientalism in Indonesia. Let me start with a very important book by Edward Said. The book is entitled Orientalism, and it was published in 1978. Since then, the book is still the watershed in the development of the area studies, the humanities and social sciences. And since its publication, the book has triggered a lot of acrimonious debate among Muslims, non-Muslims, among the Westerners, Orientalists, as well as the ulama, traditional ulama. I have read this book, I think, 10 years ago, and I met Edward Said personally, I think, back in 2000. It was in Cape Town University when he delivered a lecture in that particular university. In the past two decades or so, there has been a mainstreaming in the critique of Orientalism, and the role of Edward Said in mainstreaming this critique against Orientalism has been very fundamental. He played a very crucial role in mainstreaming the critique against Orientalism. At least there has been a shift in the way the Westerners look at the Oriental world. In the beginning, Orientalism was about the love, the fascination of the Western world to the Eastern world. The East is the world of art, culture, religion, things that the Westerners do not find in the world, in the Western world. But as time goes by, the Orientalism shifted from being a form of fascination into the Eastern world to a form of subjugation, as it were. And therefore, we find that when one speaks of Orientalism, we have in mind something which goes against the cherished belief that scholarship should be objective and rigorous, things that we do not find in the Orientalism scholarship. This is to say that the Orientalism scholarship is hardly objective, hardly rigorous. It is subjective. So Orientalism works for the benefit of the colonial power. That's what some critique have said concerning the Orientalism. Secondly, and this is related to the first one, is that Orientalism has been associated with colonialism. In other words, in Indonesia, for instance, you find a man by the name of Snok Horgrojo. And Snok Horgrojo is very famous as a colonial agent. He works for the colonial agent to understand the culture, the tradition, the religion of the object. So much so that the colonial power can produce a policy for the benefit of the colonialism. Now, by virtue of Orientalism being part of colonialism, Orientalism is therefore cannot be said as rigorous, as objective, as being in line with the academic standard. What we find these days is the attempt by the neo-colonial scholars to rework, to refashion the theories and understandings of imperialism to suit the modern standard. But still, we find that this neo-Orientalism is very much objectionable. And there are many reasons, at least 4 reasons, why neo-Orientalism is still very much the same as the Orientalism. Number 1, in this neo-Orientalism, we find that the Orient world is still constructed in the mind of the Westerners in the way that the Westerners, the Orientalists that is, put the divide between the Oriental and the Westerners in terms of inferiority and superiority. In other words, Neo-Orientalism believes in the fact that the Westerners are superior and that the Easterners are inferior. And it is with this in mind that the Westerners believe that they are better than the Easterners. Number 2, Orientalism and Neo-Orientalism refers to a system of thought, system of discourse, according which there is an ontological and epistemological distinction between the Orient and the Occident. And within this framework of analysis, the Oriental world is deemed as the negative other, while the Occident is believed to be the positive self. So according to this premise, the Westerners always look at the Oriental world in a negative way. And this is still related to the first point, that there is a divide between the West and the East. The East is inferior and the West is superior. And in the second point, the Westerners believe that the Western world, the Western culture, the Western civilization is positive self, while the Eastern culture, Eastern world is the negative other. Now, by looking at the East in terms of otherness, the Western world cannot embrace the Eastern world. And it is in this sense that now in this modern world we are living in divided world. And this division is created by Orientalism. I am not saying by the Western world, but I am saying that this division between the East and the West, and ultimately between Islam, for instance, and the Western world, and then we hear the notion of the clash of civilization. All this stems from the idea that the Eastern world, Islam included, is negative other. To speak more blatantly, many Orientalists believe that Islam, for instance, is the negative threat. Because Islam is a threat, Islam must be subjugated. And that's what we have seen today. Today we see not only a tension, not only a conflict, but also warfare between various components of our modern world, between Muslim and non-Muslim, between Islam and the West. And this division is created by the discourse of Orientalism. Number 3, Orientalism is being produced, is being formulated in a way that it is the West, it is the Western world that regulate our perception, our assumption of ourselves. And in this context, we hear that there is a kind of epistemological hegemony. The Western world, through the discourse of Orientalism, they try to impose what I call an epistemological hegemony, meaning that it is only the epistemology of the West that can be deemed as an objective and valid. The epistemologies of the Eastern world is not objective, subjective, and invalidated. And this is not fair. It is as if that only the Western scholarship that has the right and legitimacy to see and to say who we are and how our world should look like. Number 4, Orientalism shows us that our modern knowledge is power-driven. In other words, there is a close, very close relationship between knowledge and power. What I feel to be the right thing is to differentiate between the world of knowledge and the world of power. Power, authority should not dictate our knowledge. But that doesn't happen in our modern world. In our modern world, the world power dictates our knowledge. It is only the world power that can produce our knowledge. The powerless cannot produce knowledge. The European, American, they have all capacities and legitimacies to produce knowledge, while us, who live in the third world, we are deemed to be powerless and do not have legitimacy to produce knowledge. This is the injustice of our modern world, and all this is due to the discourse of Orientalism. In varying degree, this book by Michael Lafan rehearsed the idea of epistemological hegemony. Man like Michael Lafan tries to impose that in the context of Indonesian Islam, it is the Western world that shaped what we now know as the Indonesian Islam. In the theory of Michael Lafan, Indonesian Islam is the product of Dutch Orientalism, something which cannot be accepted. There is another Western scholar who wrote about Indonesia. His name is Simon Philpott. His book is entitled Rethinking Indonesia, Post-Colonial Theory, Authoritarianism and Identity. What I like about Simon Philpott is that he appropriated the theory of post-colonial. He forgot colonialism as something of the past. But Michael Lafan tries to bring to life colonialism and colonial power as well as colonial authority in producing knowledge. So Michael Lafan is part of those kind of streams which believe in the dichotomizing East and West. And this is, I would say, very unacceptable in our academic world. And I want to say emphatically that I think the Eastern world has the right to say that they are no longer the object of the Western world. The Eastern world and Western world should stand together. No one can see the other as the object. No one can see the other as, or in terms of negative other. No one has the right to see others in terms of superiority and inferiority. Time has come for us to stand together, and in terms of academic research, we need to be objective. It is not legitimate to impose our knowledge and our theory upon others. And with regard to Indonesian Islam, I have the right to say that Indonesian Islam is not at all product of Orientalism. Islam in Indonesia is the product of Islam. Islam in Indonesia is originated in the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad alaihi salatu wassalam, as well as in the Holy Quran. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.